For a full translatable transcript, follow the link in the description. You ever feel like English makes zero sense? Tough, though, and through all look similar, but sound totally different. Then someone from Ireland starts talking, and you're like, wait, is this still English? And don't get me started on putting stress on different syllables. Hey, I'm Ethan, and today we're diving into 5 reasons English is so hard to learn, and what you can actually do to make it easier. Stick around for number 5 because this might be the most important one to help your English. And don't forget there's a free translatable transcript in the description. Reason 1. English spelling is wild. Let's begin with one of the first challenges most learners face. Spelling. English spelling can be really difficult, even for native speakers. And a big reason for that is history. English has absorbed vocabulary from many different languages over time. Latin, Greek, Germanic, French, each with their own spelling rules. The result is a system that isn't always consistent. You see it in words like though, thought, through, and tough. They look similar, but they're all pronounced differently. There's not always a clear pattern to follow, and that can be really frustrating when you're just starting out. I remember learning English in school and struggling with this myself. On spelling tests, I do my best to sound the word out, but it didn't always help. In English, the way a word is written doesn't always match how it sounds. That's very different from phonetic languages like Spanish or Polish, where once you learn the sounds of the alphabet, you can usually pronounce any word you see. English doesn't work that way. There are silent letters, unusual combinations, and lots of exceptions. It's not an easy system, but the good news is, with time and exposure, patterns do start to emerge. The more you read and listen, the more familiar these spellings become. It just takes a bit of patience. Reason 2. Accents and slang. One of the most surprising challenges for English learners is just how many ways English can sound, and how different it can be depending on where you are. English is spoken in dozens of countries, and almost every region has its own accent, rhythm, and way of speaking. Someone from the south of England sounds very different from someone in Scotland or Australia. And even within the same country, there can be huge variation. An American from New York might speak differently from someone in Texas or California. That variety can be confusing, especially if you've mainly studied standard English in a classroom. It's one thing to understand your teacher or learning app. It's another to watch a movie set in Liverpool or listen to someone from rural Ireland. And on top of the accent, there's slang. Words and expressions that aren't always in textbooks. A phrase like I'm knackered in the UK just means I'm really tired, but you won't hear that in the US. In Australia, someone might say arvo instead of afternoon. These kinds of informal words are everywhere in spoken English. The challenge is that slang and accent often come together. So even if you understand the grammar, you might still be lost in a real conversation. But again, this is something that gets easier with exposure. Try to listen to different accents and pay attention to common informal phrases. Over time, your ear adjusts and you start picking up the rhythm and meaning, even when the words aren't what you expected. Reason 3. Word stress and intonation. Even when you know all the words in a sentence, English can still sound confusing because of how it's spoken. English is a stress-timed language. That means we naturally put more emphasis on certain syllables in a word and certain words in a sentence. And that stress can completely change the meaning. Take the word record. If you say record, it's a noun, like a music record. But if you say record, it's a verb, to record something. Same spelling, different pronunciation and meaning, depending on the stress. It also happens at the sentence level. For example, try saying this sentence out loud. I didn't say he stole the money. Now put the stress on a different word each time. I didn't say he stole the money. I didn't say he stole the money. I didn't say he stole the money. Each version has a slightly different meaning, even though the words stay the same. And then there's intonation, the rise and fall of your voice. In English, this often shows emotion, surprise, or whether something is a question. For example, you're going, a statement. You're going, a question. You're going, surprised or maybe annoyed. These patterns aren't always taught in traditional grammar lessons, but they're a big part of sounding natural and understanding native speakers. The best way to improve here is by listening closely and mimicking what you hear. Podcasts, conversations, and watching videos with subtitles can really help. Over time, you'll start to pick up the rhythm and flow of English without even thinking about it. Reason 4. So many exceptions. If you've ever studied English grammar and thought, okay, I understand this rule, only to learn a list of exceptions right after, you're not alone. English is full of rules that almost always work, but not quite. You've probably heard I before E except after C, but then you run into weird, science, there, height, and suddenly the rule doesn't help much. It's the same with plurals. We say mouse and mice, goose and like geese, but then house becomes houses, not heis. And don't even get started on irregular verbs. Go, went, buy, bought, catch, caught. Why not just add ed like normal? These inconsistencies are frustrating because there's often no logic behind them. They're just part of how the language evolved over time, picking up rules and changing them as it went. And because English isn't controlled by a central language authority, like the Académie Française for French, it tends to keep those oddities around. For learners, this means you'll sometimes just have to memorize the exceptions and trust that it gets easier with practice. The good news, you don't need to be perfect. Most native speakers make small mistakes too, and communication is always more important than getting every rule exactly right. Reason 5. Phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are one of the trickiest parts of English, and they don't get talked about enough. A phrasal verb is a combination of a verb and one or more small words, usually prepositions or adverbs. For example, give up, to stop trying. Run into, to meet someone unexpectedly. Look after, to take care of. The problem is, if you break them down word by word, they don't make much sense. Look means one thing, after means something else, but together, look after means something completely different. There's also the fact that many phrasal verbs have multiple meanings. Take off. It can mean removing clothing, a plane leaving the ground, or something becoming popular. So even when you know the words, the meaning depends on the context. For language learners, this can feel overwhelming. You might understand the grammar, know a lot of vocabulary, but then hear a phrase like, he's picking it up quickly, and wonder what exactly is being picked up, and why. Unfortunately, there's no easy rule here. Phrasal verbs are everywhere in everyday English, and the best way to learn them is through regular exposure. Listen to conversations, watch shows, read transcripts, and whenever you hear one, try to remember it as a full phrase, not just separate words. They take time, but once you start recognizing them, you'll notice them popping up everywhere. What you can do about it. So yes, English can be challenging. The spelling doesn't always make sense. The accents and slang can catch you off guard. There are endless exceptions, and phrasal verbs seem to break all the rules. But here's the good news. You don't have to learn it all at once, and you don't need to move to an English-speaking country to get better. We live in a time where you can immerse yourself in English from anywhere in the world. You can listen to podcasts, watch videos, read transcripts, and have real conversations online, all without leaving your home. And that kind of daily exposure makes a huge difference. Personally, I think one of the best tools is using podcast transcripts, especially ones that come from natural conversations. You get to hear how people really speak, not just textbook English. You can listen and read at the same time, pause, replay, and look up anything you don't understand. And to make that easier, we've included a transcript with a translation in your native language so you can read them side by side. English might not be the easiest language to learn, but with the right tools and a little consistency, it is something you can master. Keep going. You're doing better than you think.